Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Welcome into SEC Country Live. I'm Hannah Chalker alongside former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson, also the host of Roll Tide Daily every day on the Alabama page, and the host of the Mississippi State podcast, More Cowbell. That is Brandon Walker. Thanks everybody for joining us off the top of the show. I wanted to get some quick hits from these two guys. They've already had their shows today, so Mike, we'll start with you. What was the hot Alabama topic on your show today?
Yeah, we got a chance to talk about an article from Bruce Feldman at The Athletic about Jalen Hurts speaking to Elite 11 campers. I thought it was pretty good. It kind of gives an insight into what Jalen was kind of telling Tua at halftime and the way he felt kind of going into this whole quarterback battle.
Brandon, what about you? What's the top Mississippi State topic for today?
Joe Moorhead, the new coach of Mississippi State, was on another podcast. He was on the AP Top 25 podcast with Ralph D. Russo, talking about what it takes to recruit in the South, how he's not worried about recruiting in the South, how he feels like if you can recruit or coach in Pennsylvania or anywhere in the country, you can do so in the South. And it made me feel really good as a Mississippi State fan. I'm not going to lie to you.
Awesome. Well, our top topic today, number one, ESPN comes out with an early toughest schedule for the season, and they say that Tennessee and Arkansas have the toughest midseason 3-game stretch of any other SEC team. So Tennessee comes in at number 3 on their list. And you guys know that these midseason stretches can make or break a season. So let's take a look at the schedule for Tennessee. This is the tough 3-game stretch. That's Saturday, October 3rd at Auburn, Saturday, October 20th versus Alabama, Saturday, October 27th at South Carolina. And before I get y'all's thoughts on this, per ESPN, the Vols are 4-24 against SEC opponents in October over the last 8 seasons. And it doesn't help this year. They have to face potential national championship contenders, guys, Alabama and Auburn. Tennessee has lost 11 straight to the Tide, 6 straight to Auburn. Brandon, we'll start with you. This is worrisome for Tennessee fans.
You're going to start with me?
Yes, I am. You like that?
How did that happen?
Just trying to give you a layup here, man. This is easy.
Wow. Tennessee, well, first of all, Tennessee hasn't been a very good team lately, and Tennessee has hired a new coach, and they hope he can pull them out of what Butch Jones drove them into. I will say this about that stretch. The stretch that they have, the Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina, it isn't even the hardest stretch Tennessee has.
In their schedule, I agree with you on this one.
That doesn't even include, before they play Auburn, or the first game there, before they play that, they play Georgia. They go Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama. So ESPN is right. Tennessee has the toughest 3-game stretch not in the SEC this year, to me, in the country, but it's not Auburn, Alabama, and South Carolina. It's Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama. Now, there is an off week in there. I guess that might be maybe it's a 3-week stretch they're trying to declare here. But, boy, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina, 4 weeks in a row, that is rough for anybody, much less a bad team trying to rebuild.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, which has been few and far between this week when we've been on a ton of these topics. But it is that. I mean, ESPN hits a home run talking about Tennessee's schedule and how tough it's going to be and all the things that are going to come up between them, but they got the wrong 3 games. And I don't know if the bye week obviously comes into concern there when you're talking about the 3-week stretch, but at Georgia, bye week, at Auburn, and then playing Alabama there at home, I think that's one of the tougher 3-game stretches you're going to have in quite some time.
4 weeks. 4 weeks. You got Alabama. You play them in Knoxville, right? But you go at Georgia, at Auburn, and at South Carolina. That is nasty. That is brutal. And it's a team that isn't very good. And I noticed, we'll get to Arkansas in a minute, but Tennessee is one of the worst teams in the East. Arkansas, the worst team in the West. It seems like both of these 3-game stretches happen to really bad teams trying to rebuild. Tennessee is going to have a tough time in Jeremy Pruitt's first year. I don't know how good they're going to be, but they could even be good and improved, and we might not see it until early to late November because this early game stretch is so tough.
Yeah, and it's going to be where they're having trouble at, right? Jeremy Pruitt's trying to build this team offensively and defensively from the inside out, right? The offensive line play, we're going to be a pro-style offense. We want our front 7 to be good. Darren Kirkland decided to come back. We're trying to be good up front on this defensive line. There's no 3 better front 7s than what you're talking about in the 3-game stretch when you mentioned Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama back to back to back to back, even with the bye week thrown in there. That's a tough stretch, man. That's tough for anybody to ask or go through that, much less a Tennessee football team that's trying to play big boy football against some of these teams they're going to be facing.
Well, I know a better front 7, but we'll get to that later. Tennessee is trying to rebuild everything. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I assume it's going to be the grad transfer and Keller Christ. But going up against the schedule, these teams, I feel bad for Jeremy Pruitt. He's having to rebuild a culture, not just a team, but a culture at Tennessee, and to do it while facing down these powers. Listen, Georgia is up right now. South Carolina is trending up. Auburn and Alabama, we know they've been good. They've been good for a while. I look at Tennessee. This is a program that I couldn't believe it when I looked. They haven't beaten an SEC West team since 2010. They haven't beaten an SEC West team since 2010.
Can we get some confirmation? That is unbelievable.
What do you think? I'm joking?
I don't know. I don't know. I just need somebody to back you up.
This is a byproduct of playing Alabama every year as your main Western opponent. But they have been bad, and they played other West teams when they were good. But they haven't beaten a West team since 2010. Now you get Alabama and Auburn on the schedule from the West. That's a rough break.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
So bottom line for our Tennessee viewers, patience.
Patience and a lot of liquor, probably. I'm just patience and whiskey.
All right, Arkansas came in at number 6 on ESPN's toughest 3-game mid-season stretch. We'll take a look at their schedule. So this is according to ESPN. That's Saturday, 9/22 at Auburn. Saturday, September 29th versus Texas A&M. Saturday, October 6th versus Alabama. Once again, Auburn starts off these lists. And the Razorbacks went 1-7 in the SEC last season. And they have to face Alabama and Auburn in the West, just like Tennessee. This is going to be difficult for the Hogs.
Yeah, are you looking at me again? I get to start 2 topics in a row?
We're going first.
Wow. Listen, as much as we talk about Jeremy Pruitt having a tough rebuild and everything at Tennessee, I believe Chad Morris has a tougher rebuild at Arkansas because he has to do it in a much tougher division. He doesn't get to play Kentucky and Vanderbilt and Missouri every other week. He has to play Auburn and Texas A&M. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. That's not like playing Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Listen, Chad Morris has got to do it in the toughest division in college football at one of the toughest times, and he's got to do it coming off the strength of a coach who coached entirely differently than Chad Morris is going to coach. He's got to coach with guys that are built to run the ball and be tough and physical up front, and he's going to have to change the offense. Boy, that's a rough 3-game stretch. I think Arkansas has got a good coach. It's just going to take – this year is not going to be pretty at all.
No, I completely agree with you on that one as well, because you talk about completely differing philosophies from what Brett Bielema was to what Chad Morris was. And Brett Bielema was, listen, they ran kind of a pound it down your throat spread. I mean, that's exactly what it was. It was like 3 wide receivers on the field and we're going to run the ball at you. But we're talking about an Arkansas football team that might be looking at a true freshman quarterback that really a lot of people think might step up and take the reins that's showing up right now. A guy that's the starting running back in Devwah Whaley that's been accused of tiptoeing too much. I'm not really thinking that he's the feature back they really need up there at Arkansas. And they lack talent on the offensive and defensive lines like they have for quite some time. They're completely revamping what the defense is up there. They're trying to do some things differently. You talk about Tennessee fans needing to kind of pour a drink and sit back a little bit. Arkansas is way ahead of that, man. I think they got a tougher climb ahead of them, no doubt.
I do too. I think they have a tougher climb. And somebody in the section, the Facebook Live section here says, listen, Arkansas is not the worst team in the SEC West. You tell me a worse team than Arkansas in the SEC West. I just don't see it. I think with a new coach, with everything going on, the talent differential between them and A&M and Auburn and Alabama, I think they're in a worse spot than anybody else in the SEC West. And this 3-game stretch is going to be brutal for that team.
Yeah, no, I think that it's definitely, to me, it's definite in the SEC West when you talk about Arkansas being the team that has the hardest climb here. Now, can Chad Morris come in there and do more with less? Absolutely. I mean, I think that's what Chad Morris was hired for, right? A guy that can kind of spread the ball out, has these offensive philosophies that kind of highlight what a lot of your guys are good at. But it's not the place and time to do it right now in the SEC West. A lot of these teams are kind of, I mean, Mississippi State, like I said, I mean, I kind of joked with you earlier, but that's going to be a good football team. Ole Miss is going to be able to throw the ball. I have one of the best wide receiver corps. LSU is going to be athletic like they always are. Jimbo Fisher shows up at Texas A&M. Right now, Chad Morris might be in the right spot, but it's at the wrong time.
Every SEC West team, like you just mentioned, has something going for it. I don't know what Arkansas has going for it. I don't dislike Arkansas. I think Arkansas is a good program, but it's got to be rebuilt from what Brett Bielema made it.
No, I agree.
Besides Tennessee and Arkansas, and you weighed in on Ole Miss a little bit, what other team in the SEC has a very hard schedule or a difficult 3-game mid-season stretch?
Well, it's not mid-season, but I'm going to go Auburn, and I'm cheating a little bit. Because Auburn closes the season. Now, they do have a game with Liberty mixed in here, but Auburn closes the season with this. They close with Texas A&M and then at Georgia and at Alabama. If Auburn is not sitting at undefeated or with just one loss, they are setting themselves up for a really disappointing finish because, listen, Texas A&M is going to be a pretty good football team. I don't think they're going to beat Auburn, but they're still going to be a tough test at home. And then you got to finish at Georgia and at Alabama, the 2 best teams in the SEC and 2 of the best teams in the country. That is a brutal 3-game stretch. That's who I've got, Auburn.
Now, I think that when you talk about these schedules, and obviously we talk about bye weeks and you talk about Liberty being in the middle of these, I'm also looking at home and away, and I'm telling you right now, there is no, as far as, if I can include bye weeks, there's no tougher 3-game stretch for me than Texas A&M has in the middle of their schedule when they go at South Carolina and Columbia. They have a bye week. Then they go to Starkville, Mississippi, and then they go to Auburn to play those 3 football teams.
You're so sweet, Mike.
I just think that when you talk about, I mean, think about that now. October 6th to November 10th, they will not have a home game. That is a football team that will live on the road other than that bye week. And I think that people that don't do it don't understand how tough that is, 3 games in a row to go on the road and play 3 quality football teams.
What I wanted to ask you, and I hope I'm okay going ahead and asking him this,
Go ahead.
but you played SEC football. You didn't play Pac-12 football, you didn't play Big Ten football, but you played SEC football. I contend, and all SEC fans contend, that what sets this league apart is that it's a grind all season.
Yep.
You don't have breaks. You don't have, like in the Big Ten, maybe you get to go to Northwestern or Illinois or Indiana, whoever's really, really down. In this league, in this SEC, these 3-game and 4-game stretches can be brutal. There's never a week off.
No, there's not, and that's what makes it so tough. And it's honestly, being an offensive lineman too, I think I've always said what separates the SEC is the athleticism and the physicality in the front 7. That's where it's at. That's what's different than other leagues. You have good defensive lines, and you have decent linebacker play, and you're going to see teams from USC that have good front 7s, or Washington this year that have good front 7s. It's week in and week out, and the physicality on those defensive lines and on those front 7s, the linebacking core. That's what separates it. When you're getting hit in the mouth by that on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and then you're going to practice and doing the same thing, and then bouncing back and playing teams like South Carolina and like Mississippi State, and even teams like Arkansas that have had physical players in that front 7, that's what makes that schedule such a grind throughout the conference season.
Can I ask you a question? I don't want to put you on the spot. Can you remember in your career at Alabama, can you remember the toughest 3 or 4 game stretch you had?
Oh, man.
I know I'm putting you on the spot because, by the time you left, you guys were national champions. But can you remember just a grind? We have to go through this week, and man, we got this next week?
I always remembered, and I'm not going to, I don't remember the schedules per se, like each individual team, but I always remembered the month of November being absolutely terrible. I mean, we almost always played Mississippi State at the end of the year, which they always give us a good fight. The LSU game physically was absolutely draining for me. Anytime you played that LSU defensive front, didn't matter if it was Glenn Dorsey or Al Woods or Tyson Jackson or whoever it was, they were going to hit you in the mouth, and they were big, and you were sore from pushing them around. And then to end the season, they're at the end of November playing Auburn in the Iron Bowl. You had to lay it all on the line no matter how you felt.
And then in your last season, you get through that stretch, and a week later you play Florida in the SEC
last 2 years,
game.
my junior and senior year, you get Carlos Dunlap, you get Brandon Spikes, you get all those guys. A week later in that.
See, I'm being nice to you today, Mike. I'm not handing you
that.
I'm
A little
not handing
olive
you
branch
an L
across the way. A little olive branch across the way. I like it, man. It's good stuff.
Well, things couldn't be any worse for Tennessee. Former Tennessee QB Quentin Dormady transfers to Houston. It is official. He will be eligible to play this season, possibly behind junior starter De'Aaron King if Quentin doesn't win the job himself. So if you remember, he played in 16 games and 5 starts in 3 seasons with the Volunteers. He also started the season before getting hurt. Do you guys think this is the right move for him?
Mike, you can take this.
It's puzzling to me. It's puzzling to me. I would love to hear. Is it Major Applewhite still the head coach down there? I believe at Houston. He used to be the offensive coordinator for me in 2007, Nick Saban's first year at Alabama. There was a reason that he was, not invited back and wound up being the wide receiver coach the next year at the University of Texas. Because he didn't do a lot of good things. But now he's the head coach down at Houston. I would love to hear what his sales pitch was to Quentin Dormady. I really would. Because in my mind, and maybe this is a hot take to Tennessee fans, and maybe I'm stepping out of turn, and maybe I'm not looking at all the facts here, but I think Quentin Dormady would have been the favorite to start in Jeremy Pruitt's offense that he's trying to put together under Tyson Helton. I think when you look at Jared Garantano, what he does well, and when you look at what Keller Chris does well, and Will McBride or JT Shroud, whoever it is that you're looking at the quarterback position, I think Quentin Dormady is a great kind of middle ground on all those guys. The pro-style offense he's trying to put together, I think would have been a better fit to a guy like Quentin Dormady than a guy like Jared Garantano.
See, I am going to disagree here because I don't know where Quentin Dormady fit. First of all, I think Tennessee is undergoing kind of, I don't want to say flushing the system a little bit, but as many guys with Butch Jones ties as you can get away from and rebuild from the start. Keep the really good ones, but you got 4 or 5 quarterbacks there. You got Garantano, and now you got Keller Chris coming in. I'm of the opinion Keller Chris is coming in because he is going to be the starting quarterback at Tennessee. He's going to be a stopgap this year, and he is going to start at that program. I don't see where Quentin Dormady fit in. I watched last year. I never saw a quarterback that I think, wow, Tennessee can really turn the corner with this guy. That's not what I saw. I just saw a guy was just a guy. He's just out there. He was just, kind of prolonging the agony of the end of the Butch Jones era. Going to Houston, probably a good move for Quentin Dormady, and I think it doesn't hurt Tennessee in the least bit.
I wonder what the sales pitch was, because seemingly Houston has a quarterback already in place that a lot of people down there seem to love. So Quentin Dormady, obviously, he's transferring close to home. He's a Texas native. He wants to get back. I think Houston's 3 hours from where his hometown is there in the state of Texas, outside of San Antonio. That's one thing. You want to go close to home. But if you have 1 year left to play, you're telling me you're leaving a place like Tennessee that's in the middle of a transition year? You think a guy like Keller Christ, you think has more answers to that program than Quentin Dormady at this time? I just disagree with you. I look at Keller Christ. Yes, the arm talent's there. Yes, he's going to be very knowledgeable. Yes, he's played a ton of quality snaps. But Keller Christ is going to be a statue in the backfield. He's going to be Tom Brady-esque. And do they have the offensive line to really hold up to that style of quarterback play? I'm not sure.
I'm very anxious to see what happens to guys like Quentin Dormady, to other players that have transferred out of Tennessee the last couple of years, to even coaches like Bob Shoop, the defensive coordinator, once they get out from under the Butch Jones clown show. I mean, it was an absolute clown car of football the last couple of years at Tennessee. And now that these guys like Dormady get somewhere else, and, I don't know Major Applewhite from anybody. You know him, but I'm telling you right now, he's a better coach than Butch Jones is. And he's got to be better than what Tennessee has had in that atmosphere and that culture. I just wonder what it's going to look like once these players get out from under the shadow of Butch Jones. If Dormady gets out to Houston and all of a sudden you look and this is a completely different player, I think that's possible.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way, that he could have done that at Tennessee, though. I really, when I look at what he's trying to say, what they're trying to say, pro style of offense, pound it down your throat, and then we're going to throw it over the top and take our shots. That's Quentin Dormady to me. That's Quentin Dormady written all over it, and I just wish the guy would have stayed. I know that there's a lot of questions, and I'm sure he got worn out of being coached under Butch Jones and losing a ton of football games and going 0-8 in the SEC and opting for the surgery last year, whatever it was that ended his year. But it blows my mind that he's going to go down to a place in Houston where he might not even get the shot to be a full-time starter. It's just close to home.
I don't know what you saw in Quentin Dormady that makes you think he would have been the guy.
He was a starter last year.
I know he was a starter, and they were awful. They went 0-8 in the SEC.
But what you're saying is you're making the argument that everybody looks better without Butch Jones.
I do.
So why does Quentin Dormady not fit under that umbrella? He's going to look better without Butch Jones down in Houston. He could have done it at Tennessee.
I just think I look at those quarterbacks, and to me, there's more life under Jarrett Garantano than there was Quentin Dormady. I looked at that offense under Quentin Dormady, and I said, what are they even trying to do? Nothing made sense. So I think a fresh start for him in Houston is good, and a fresh start for Tennessee with Keller Christ this year, and then Jeremy Pruitt can evaluate and bring in who he wants.
I think that I know why they made the change last year. Jared Garantano was more mobile. He was able to do a lot more things with his legs. He was maybe looked at as being the tougher kind of version of what they were going. But there's a reason Quentin Dormady was handed that job from the get-go. He started the first 5 games, was never really given the opportunity to kind of take the reins. They didn't like how not vocal he was in that role. So if you're being handed a program, and I know he didn't get the opportunity to really make this decision, but I'm just telling you right now, if Jeremy Pruitt had taken over that program and Quentin Dormady had not already said he's transferring, I'm not sure Jeremy Pruitt goes out and gets Keller Christ.
Maybe not, but maybe the reason he was the starter in the first place, you say, oh, well, he was the starter, that's why he was good, because you can tell because he was a starter. Butch Jones didn't know what he was doing. So any decision he made last year doesn't really matter to me.
It's hard to argue that.
Butch Jones was a terrible coach. I don't care who was a starter. I mean, I could have been a starter under Butch Jones. So just nothing that happened under Butch Jones should be relevant from here on out. Good luck to Quentin Dormady. I think Keller Christ is going to give Jeremy Pruitt the bridge he needs to bring in the guy to really turn this thing around.
I like Quentin Dormady transferring. I mean, I know you said he only has 1 year left. Why leave a program like Tennessee? But he has a chance to fight for a starting position. And I think it's the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, he would have had that chance to start to fight for the starting position at Tennessee, and it would have given him a little bit of a leg up in my opinion.
A lot of our commenters say he was a flop last season, so they disagree with you.
Yeah, they're on a lot of things right now. A lot of people making the arguments in the comment section. You guys continue to weigh in, please.
All right, on to topic number 3. Another SEC ex, former Auburn AD Jay Jacobs, joins rival Florida. Joining the Florida staff, guys. He will be the Gators' new Executive Associate Athletic Director, replacing Mike Hill, who was named Charlotte's new AD in February. And guys, he was there for 13 years in the position at Auburn, stepped down in November following, you remember, the softball scandal, the FBI investigation into the men's basketball program. Well, Florida AD Scott Strickland sees positive things in him. Here's his statement. He said his character, vision, experience, experience and ability to connect with people will be tremendous assets to our department. Additionally, having served in a leadership role in the SEC, Jay understands the great privilege and responsibility we have as a member of this wonderful conference. It's exciting to have Jay joining the Gators. So I don't think this is as bad as Hugh Freeze possibly going to Alabama at one point, but Mike, we'll go with you this time. Doesn't this just bring more drama to the Florida program? This guy imploded a bit at Auburn. There were so many things that were going wrong. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's tough. I think you have to be careful if you're the Florida administration and listen, it wasn't only, the Title IX thing with the softball coach. It's also, Chuck Person, that whole ordeal with the basketball team last year. That's the reason, he was headed out of Auburn. That's the reason. Listen, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, the Auburn, athletic department, clean staff, fires 6 people, kind of, shows them the gate. So kind of shows you what was going on under his watch there at Auburn. But I'm on Florida's side on this one, actually. And I think that anytime you can bring in a sounding board, anytime you can bring in somebody that has as much knowledge and as much experience as he does in his time there at Auburn, I think it's a good thing. I think that you can bring a guy like that in, make sure you kind of put these, kid gloves on and what he's, asked to do there in his role there down at Florida. And you can use him as a knowledge base, somebody to bounce ideas off of, much in the way that Nick Saban's doing with Butch Jones, much in the way he wanted to do with Hugh Freeze, Steve Sarkisian, a lot of those people. It's the same way up in the administration for me. If you can keep the kid gloves and kind of keep him in these brackets, then I think it can be a good thing for them.
I don't know, Mike. I don't know about this.
His face was saying it.
Yeah. He was giving me the side eye the whole time I was
clearly anytime you have a chance to hire a guy who got fired and left in disgrace from one SEC school, you got to do it, right? No, Jay Jacobs, all I need to know about Jay Jacobs and getting hired at Florida is from Auburn message boards. Auburn fans will tell you everything, and they're laughing hysterically at this hire. They can't believe that Jay Jacobs has landed at the University of Florida. Listen, I don't know Jay Jacobs. If he walked in here, I wouldn't know him, but he got run out of Auburn. Yeah. He got run out of Auburn. He didn't just say, okay, bye, I'm leaving, I'm ready to go, thanks for the memories. He was ousted. He was saying, you can't work here anymore. And Scott Strickland said, okay, come work over here. How does that work? How do you get a job like this when you failed at your last one?
Yeah, no, I understand the questions. Don't get me wrong, but much like Butch Jones was an extreme failure at Tennessee, why bring him on at Alabama? Yeah, because he can give you that knowledge base.
He's washing cars at Alabama.
He's squeegeeing windshields. Yes, I'll give you that. I don't really love him wearing crimson. I don't think he looks good in that type of outfit. But it's like I said, he's a sounding board. He's one of those people that can get in these situations and say, you know what? I'd be careful about this because I've been in this situation before. Make sure you're watching what you do. Make sure you're watching your steps. And I think for that reason, he can be a viable asset for Scott Strickland down at Florida. I really do. I know that it's Florida fans might be looking at it and thinking, what the heck, or Auburn fans or whatever, but he's been in this league a long time, knows a ton of people. I think it could be a good thing in the end.
So, like Scott Strickland's in his office about to make a decision, and he's like, hey, Jay, come in here. You got fired. Tell me what to do.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there. It's kid gloves.
It's that kind of
You don't ask him to do a lot. You don't ask him to oversee your basketball program or your softball program. You just say, hey, listen, what do you think about this? And I think he's over ticketing and whatever. They're going to give him some other job titles, but I think that having him in the office is a good thing.
Is that kind of why I'm here? Well, I get to say the stupid
bounce ideas off.
I get to say the stupid things, so you don't have to. And I get ushered out of here in handcuffs.
Tee me up, and I can hit the home runs.
Yeah, you're the executive assistant of SEC Country Live.
Oh boy!
Before we leave this topic, though, you mentioned it. Nick Saban does the same exact thing, though.
Yeah.
Wanted to bring in Hugh Freeze, supposedly. Butch Jones. He'll bring in any former head coach that he can. What's the strategy behind that?
It's exactly what I think it is. I think that Nick understands that, first of all, he hired Michael Loxley as his offensive coordinator this year, who doesn't have a ton of history in that role. I think it was more of a recruiting move in terms of hiring him as the OC. So what do? Surround him with Dan Enos. Surround him with a ton of people that know offensive play calling. You try to surround him with Hugh Freeze. You surround him with Butch Jones. People that have been in those situations before. So when you're going through a game plan, you're looking at the board saying, I think this play will work, and I think this play will work. And a guy like Butch Jones can come in and say, you know what? We ran that last year, and here's what this defense tried to do to us. This is why we struggled with it. So it's just somebody that can highlight the ups and downs of situations, and that's why I think it's okay at Florida.
Can I read a comment here? Stephen Early on Facebook Live says, it's bring your kid to work day, and Jay Jacobs is in his Sunday best, ready to go to work with daddy. That's fantastic.
That's good stuff.
That's right great. There. Let's continue the Florida talk for just a moment, shall we?
Oh, thank goodness.
Shall we? I know this is your favorite topic.
It is.
Florida gets 4-star defensive tackle from Georgia, Jalen Humphries. He took his first official visit just a day ago and tweeted this less than 24 hours after that visit to Gainesville. He said 110% committed to the University of Florida. Now, Humphries also visited Gainesville during spring ball and named Florida in his top 10 then on May 19th, along with 7 other SEC schools, including Alabama and Auburn. How big of a get is this for the Gators, Brandon?
Well, first of all, Dan Mullen left at Mississippi State a loaded defensive line. And that this year, you got Jeffrey Simmons, you got Montez Sweat. You have a very loaded defensive line, and it looks like they're so far so good as far as defensive line recruiting. And the question I have for Dan Mullen and Florida, Dan Mullen is an outstanding football coach. Dan Mullen is the best coach in the history of Mississippi State University. I believe that, and I thank him for the 9 years he spent at Mississippi State. I have wondered, will he recruit at a level high enough to keep Florida fans happy? Not will he recruit at a level high enough to win. I know he can do that. I've seen it. Will he recruit at a level high enough to keep Florida fans happy? Will he win in February? This is a good start, a 4-star defensive tackle out of Georgia.
Why are those two things not one and the same? I don't understand. Like, if you're winning, why are the fans not happy? You said, can he recruit good enough to keep the fans happy? Because I know he can recruit good enough to win. That's one and the same for me. Florida fans just want to have a winning football program. They don't want to go whatever they were in the SEC and win 4 games last year. I think as long as you're winning, the Florida fans are going to be happy. Now, can he do it to a level that he can be successful in the long run against Florida State and against Georgia and against possibly South Carolina and maybe what Jeremy Pruitt's building at Tennessee? That's the question I have. I think he's always going to have a little bit of a leg up offensively, schematically, whatever you want to call it. I think he's always had tough football teams at Mississippi State. I think he's seen the way to do it in Gainesville. But can he recruit to where he can keep up with the Joneses in the SEC East and at Florida State? I think that's the biggest question for me. Now, is this a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Is this the anchor, the Wanye Morris like Tennessee's gotten or the Owen Popo like Auburn's got? I don't think that's the anchor. I think that this guy is a good football player. But he is a 4-star defensive lineman, and this moves them up to 23rd in the country as opposed to a top 10 team like Florida probably should be all along.
What you're saying is logical, and you're right. If he wins, it shouldn't matter what he's recruiting as long as he wins on the field. But SEC fan bases, and I know SEC fan bases. Florida fans are not going to like being 23rd in recruiting. They're never going to like that. Listen, Mississippi State, it is what it is. Mississippi State fans were okay with it. They accepted top 25 classes, top 20 classes. Florida fans are not going to accept top 20 and top 25 classes from Dan Mullen. They're just not going to do it.
I think Stephen Early is agreeing with you in the Facebook comment section. Florida desperately wants a Tebow, not just a winning football program. They want a star, a champion, someone to enshrine, someone to plaster his name across underwear and sell for $34.99. And I get that. I agree with that. But in my opinion, winning is a cure-all. And I think that the minute you do have somebody that is winning football games, then they become enshrined like a Tebow. And I don't know, like Emory Jones, Felipe Franks, Kyle Trask, whatever. I don't know who it's going to be. But the minute they start winning football games and the minute they win games like Tim Tebow was, then all of a sudden they're enshrined. I think the winning has to come first before you enshrine the guy like so many teams have been inclined to do recently.
I think Florida had the best coaching hire in the SEC this year. Better than Jimbo Fisher, better than anybody. Dan Mullen at Florida can win if somebody takes care of the recruiting for him. If the Florida name and the Gator logo takes care of recruiting and gets him in the top 10. If he has top 10 talent every year, he's going to contend for the SEC East every single year. I think Florida's going to win 9 games this year. A lot of people roll their eyes when I say that. I think Florida wasn't that bad last year. They were just terribly coached. I think Dan Mullen is going to win 9 games this year. But I just wonder if 3 or 4 years down the road, if the biggest recruit he gets is a 4-star defensive tackle, if Florida fans are going to like that.
No, and I think he'll end up getting bigger names. But I think the ball has to start rolling pretty soon, doesn't it? I mean, we can't just get all the way into football season and think things are going to flip. Now, if they do start to winning, that could be different. I know you say that you think Dan Mullen was the best hire in the SEC this past offseason. In my opinion, it was 3 years too late down at Florida. I think if Dan Mullen goes down there with the talent they had on Florida's football team for the first 2 years of Jim McElwain's tenure down there, I think it's a runaway train. I think he steps right in. He does incredible things offensively. The defense is incredible. They're able to do great things. They go to the SEC championship game the way they did the first 2 years of McElwain's tenure, and all of a sudden, Florida's recruiting itself. Now, Florida's having to rebuild from a 4-win football team, and it doesn't look as good to recruit. So I think there definitely is an uphill battle for that.
Somebody in the Facebook Live section, comment section says, you're insane. Pruitt was the best hire. That's not true at all. Jeremy Pruitt, not even in the realm of the hires of Jimbo Fisher and Dan Mullen. I think those are the 2 best hires. I really think this 4-star defensive tackle commit, this is a good building block, like you said, for Dan Mullen, but this can't be this can't be the roof. I mean, he has to get 5 stars. He's got Mark Richt to his south. He's got Willie Taggart to his west. He has Kirby Smart building what he's building to his north. It's going to be very tough, and I think he's a better coach than all those guys, but can he recruit with those guys?
No, and I agree too, and there has to be an anchor, right? I mean, Brandon Adams comes in here and talks about it all the time. Justin Fields was the anchor of the class. Everybody wanted to go play with Justin Fields. Dan Mullen's got to find that guy, and once you do, and if he can get that guy on campus, and I know obviously they're courting a bunch of guys, they have all these cookouts and things going on, but they have to find the anchor of that program. As good as this guy is, Jalen Humphries, I don't think he's that anchor type of guy.
Well, Humphries gives Florida 9 commits in their 2019 class. He was actually scheduled to make another official visit to LSU this weekend. This is what he said, though. He's completely shutting down his recruiting. He said, "The coaches made me feel very comfortable. I spent a lot of time with players over the weekend, and it all fell right into place with Florida. I am fully shutting my recruitment down. The University of Florida is my school. This is where I want to go." And I quickly want to get y'all's opinion on this. Why are some of these guys shutting down their recruiting when early signing period is so far away in December, National Signing Day in February is so far away? Why is someone like this, who had a top 10 list and many SEC teams after him, other conferences after him, why is a guy like this completely shutting his recruitment down?
I've never been recruited by an SEC team. He has. Let's let him take it.
Well, no, I can go ahead and tell you because I didn't have the wide-ranging offers like this guy, and recruiting was a completely different thing back in 2005 when I was coming out of high school. But I can just go ahead and tell you on the dotted line that these guys know a lot of people's after them. And they know that they got to get recruiting pointed in the right direction. So do you want a guy committed to you that's going to show up at LSU this weekend? Because he had a visit scheduled to LSU this weekend. Do you want a guy committed to you that's going to go to LSU, that's from Lawrenceville, that's going to go to Athens, that's going to get a chance to go over to Tuscaloosa? You don't want that look. You don't want a guy that's going to commit to you and then 6 months later say, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else. So if that guy's going to commit, then you tell him that he needs to shut down everything else he's doing, or it's not a committable offer. Hey, we don't want you to commit here and then show up in Baton Rouge this weekend. It's not what we're looking for in the signing class. I think that's what Dan Mullen probably had to say yesterday.
Yeah, but that's very dangerous when you start telling guys that are wanted that everybody else wants, hey, if you don't commit to us and shut it down, we're pulling your offer. No, you're not doing that. You can't do that. Right. Too many good players out there that can take their recruitment all the way to the end. I don't know. Shutting down your recruitment, it sounds nice, but saying it and doing it, 2 completely different things.
Yeah.
Okay, on to a lighter topic and to the recruiting king himself. Topic number 5. Nick Saban runs out of gas. Hey, if you guys tuned in on Monday, we showed you the video of Nick Saban taking a bunch of his players tubing on his brand new boat this past weekend. Well, they got stuck in the middle of the lake and they had to give somebody a call. Well, this was his official statement following them getting stuck in the middle of the lake and following the viral video that went around. He goes, "This was a brand spanking new boat, and it's the first time I've been out in it. So when I stalled, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I bought a new boat, and they didn't put gas in it. I didn't even think about it. You just assume that it's got gas when you get a new car or a new boat. My heart sunk for a minute because I had all these kids out there. I had 2 of them on tubes when it happened, but we had fun. I'm sure did hear about it." He went on to say,
maybe not.
He went on to say, there we go.
Hey.
I've got all these kids on the boat, and I say we must have run out of gas, and then look at the gas gauge, but it's full. So I call a mechanic who brings another boat, and he resets the thing, or whatever, that's what I would say. And I told him, okay, you drive that boat, I'm driving this boat. I've been getting busted for this, but the kids are having fun with it, and you guys know that he's heard it from Miss Terry. I think this is hilarious.
Yeah. It makes, to me, and we covered this a little bit on Roll Tide Daily, to me it makes Nick Saban seem normal. I mean, anybody that's ever, if you're out there in the comment section, you ever owned a boat, this happens. Man, I can't tell you, I've been, you load the cooler down, you want to head out in the middle of the lake or go do whatever, and then the boat breaks down with everybody on board waiting to have a good time. I own a boat, I'm telling you right now, this happens to everybody, man.
Yeah, Mike, we run in different circles. The boat that I can afford to own, doesn't have a gas gauge. All right, if the paddles fell out, then we got a problem. Listen, I don't know. Nick Saban buys a boat. What he said, I thought it was hilarious. If you buy a new car, you just assume it has gas in it. No, Nick, it has a gas gauge. You don't have to assume anything. You just take your eyes and look at the gas gauge. If it says F, it's good. If it says E, you need to get some gas. You say it makes him seem normal. I say it makes him seem the furthest thing from normal there is.
It's so funny to me too because these players are cracking up with it. He's got the Yankee shirt on. He's got swim trunks. You're not used to seeing kind of Nick Saban in that role in terms of what he kind of brings to the table. You don't see him like cutting jokes or cracking up or pulling guys on tubes. But It's one of those things, and I agree. First of all, when's the last time Nick Saban went to a car dealership? And I mean, he owns like 3 Mercedes dealerships, so he ain't showing up to a car dealership. But it is one of those things where, listen, fuel pump or whatever, and then he calls the guy. Nick Saban does, and he told us this one time, buys a new boat every year. Buys a new boat every spring and trades the old one in. It's kind of a win-win for both people because I'm assuming the boat dealer's like, hey, got Nick Saban's old boat. Got Nick Saban's old boat, and then Nick Saban gets a brand new boat, and it kind of works out for everybody, but just not in this circumstance.
Is that what you bought? Did you buy one of Nick Saban's
old
boats?
No, I listen, we run in different circles, me and you. I run in different circles than Nick Saban. I don't have any. He's got those nice new like Cobalts and all that. I've got like a 15-year-old used one. So
John West in the comment section said he called Butch Jones to bring in some gas pronto. Before the show, I think it was you that told me, I would hate to be the guy that sold Nick Saban the boat with the fuel pump problem.
I would definitely. I would not want to be the guy that sold Nick Saban a faulty fuel gauge or whatever it was.
All right, we are going to leave you with our last topic today, and this should put a smile on all of our faces. I don't care what team you root for. So 3 LSU linebackers made a wish come true, and I absolutely love this story. The linebackers are Patrick Queen, Jacob Phillips, and Tyler Taylor. So a guy named Dean Vosberg knew the end was near after being diagnosed with bone cancer, and he is a die-hard LSU fan. Well, he lives in the town of Morganville, Louisiana, an hour away from Baton Rouge, and these 3 linebackers, this gives me chills, these 3 linebackers drove out there to make his final wish come true. How special is this?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You know, we talk on this show and on a lot of shows about, bad stuff or funny stuff or this guy gets arrested. That's a neat story.
Awesome.
What can you say about that, Mike?
No, I think it's one of those things where, listen, I'm a little bit of an old school guy when it comes to social media and Facebook and all this, but this is the highlight of it, right? These are the good things that Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that can bring stories like these and connect these people, right? We don't know, you don't always get the chance to connect. Facebook was just being kind of started when I got to college, and now all of a sudden, we can get on here and do a show and talk to people and do all that. The connection that these social media types bring, and that you get guys that are upstanding citizens. You get the connection, but you also wouldn't have learned about these 3 LSU linebackers. You wouldn't have known about this happening in another day and age. You get the stories from back in the 60s, or I did, about that police officer used to have to pick up Joe Namath when he was drunk and all these things. This is the upside. These are the stories you don't hear about. I think that's one of the beautiful things about social media, that it brings stories like this.
Yeah, that's a neat story out of LSU.
And these are sophomores that drove an hour out of their busy schedules to visit this guy. I absolutely love that story.
And didn't run out of gas.
And they did not run out of gas on the way there or on the way back. We're getting quite a few questions in the comment section throughout the show. Where's BA? No 1st and 10. Well, guys, don't worry. BA will be back on Monday. He is on vacation with his family, taking a much-needed vacation. I think he takes one like once every 5 years. So that's where he is, and we decided to shorten up the show a little bit this week to give you more out of each topic. So that's why there is no 1st and 10, but we have a 1st and 6, and we'll be back tomorrow. But for now, we end the show the same way we do each and every day with our champion of life. We talked about Butch Jones a lot today. He's the ultimate champion of life. But today, this is an awesome video. Mike Johnson found this one, and I think it's viral. Mike,
it's a viral video for sure.
You take this one.
Well, listen, it's become a thing where anytime somebody catches the baseball foul ball in their beer, they have to chug it. But I don't even think this chick meant to do this. Like, I don't think this was like, I think everybody's yelling like, chug it right there. And, first of all, it's a terrible chug, and she's going to get to it at some point. You can tell she doesn't want to do it, and it's probably not good at chugging the beer. But she's like, okay, I got to do this. Everybody's looking at me. The TV camera's on me, probably on the big screen out there in the outfield at Petco. I want to say they were playing the Braves last night. I think they were playing the Braves out in Petco Park, but not a great chug. But you got to love how, this chick kind of takes the beer to the face, kind of, second gulps it, but doesn't even take the baseball out of the cup. So she's got to be up there for champion of life.
The ball landed in the cup.
I'm not sure. Like, I don't think she meant to do that. It's almost like she looked down and was like, "Oh my God, there's a baseball in my cup." Why am I splashed with beer? But listen, I respect it.
I guess again we run in different circles. I thought that was a pretty good beer chug. I thought, if you're sitting there and a baseball lands in your cup, you're not expecting it, and all of a sudden you're put on the spot. I thought it was pretty good.
She did do pretty good. You're right. She did do pretty good.
Beer is my drink of choice, so it was a pretty good chug.
Have you ever caught a baseball in
your
beer cup?
I have not, but now I have it on my bucket list.
Beer, though?
Rarely.
Yeah.
Rare.
Back at Ole Miss?
See, I'm kind of bougie with it. I like the craft beer, so
back at Ole Miss.
Sipping. Look, I mean, this isn't bad.
No, it's pretty good. It's a good beer chug. I didn't play
she's
offensive
gotta,
line in Alabama,
stop
hanging
and
out
restart
at
here in a second, but it's not bad.
football fields or
Double clutch,
whatever.
She gets to the end and then double clutches, and she's like, "Oh, there's more left." Oh, and then her friend's like, "Yeah, we're going viral."
And the pressure's
Yeah, but
on.
she finished it off.
She definitely did go.
I'll
viral,
give her
too.
about an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good
Yeah,
assessment.
that's good. I'll take
All right,
that.
guys, we appreciate you hanging in there with us. We've got one more day tomorrow, and I promise you it's going to be just as fun. Thanks, guys, for joining me, too. Mike, tell everybody about your show that you host.
Yeah, Roll Tide Daily. Obviously, we're going to be back on tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, noon Central, on the SEC Country Alabama page and YouTube, and you guys can find us. We got a ton of good stuff to put out there for Alabama fans. Fans of other teams. And Shannon, I'm looking at you. I don't know if you'll enjoy it as much, but appreciate you guys watching and Roll Tide to
Come on
everybody
over
out
and
there.
give your buddy Mike some support. Brandon Walker, what about your show?
Tomorrow at 11:45 Eastern, 10:45 Central Time. Hey, I got it right. I had to say it
Woo,
myself.
I didn't say it today.
But listen, I want to invite Bo Molinari, the Texas A&M fan who said he's going to show up every single day to my show. Please, Bo, I will roll out the red carpet. Please come to my show. We'll talk about Mississippi State, how much better they are than Texas A&M.
Yeah, and Bo, I helped produce that show. We're all in the comment section. It's actually a really fun show, and
It's a fantastic show.
he's the same as he is on this show,
That's
unfortunately.
correct.
All right, guys, thanks so much for watching SEC Country Live. I'm Hannah Chalker. We will see you right back here at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then. Have a great hump day.